I think there's so many reasons for those pensioners to regret voting Tory that this is just the latest in a long list. Look at the promises on social care.
Let's look at the promise on pensions.
Absolutely. Look at the promise on pensions. Pensioners. Not all pensioners are poor, but many, many poor people are pensioners. And if you are struggling and you have been promised that you are going to see your pension rise in line with wages, and the government says, no, we've changed our mind on that.
Which, to be fair, they haven't.
No, but that's the rumour that's going around, that they're going to change it, and it will make a marginal difference to wealthy pensioners, but it could make a material difference to pensioners who are poor and relying on the state pension.
So Labour's position is what?
I have no idea whether Labour has actually even pronounced on it.
Well, shall I educate you on that one?
Please.
Angela Rayner actually announced yesterday at the TUC that Labour, she wouldn't commit herself to the triple lock. So there is no promise from Labour coming that they are going to maintain it after the next election.
Yeah, well, but the point is surely that when it comes to an election, you make your promises, and then you should be judged on those promises. And the Conservatives made a promise. If they break it, they should be judged to have broken it, and that will lose them support.
So Keir Starmer should therefore be judged on all the promises that he has broken after he was elected leader. Literally, virtually every single one that he made in the leadership campaign, he's now broken.
Yes, that was not to the wider electorate at a general election, as you know. No, I don't think it is, and I would have my own beef about certain of those promises that have not been kept. But that's the point that I'm making, is to try and respond to Peter's point, where he said, should pensioners be concerned or upset and learn the lesson, that actually the promise that was made to them appears to be going to be broken. Now, it hasn't yet, but if it is, as I say, you make your promise before the election. Now, it's quite fair for Angela Rayner to say, we will make our promises before the election, and we'll make it when we know what the state of the economy is like, and then judge us on how we keep those promises. But at the moment, I think Peter's right, judge the Conservatives by whether they've kept their promises or not. And on many, many, many things, as they say, social care is just one of them, they haven't.
OK. Dale?
I thought you made a good point there about the voting intentions of different demographics, older people versus young people. And I just wanted to say this next election is being gerrymandered by the Tory government, who have introduced a new law to make it much harder for young people to vote than it is for older people to vote. So if you're a pensioner, you can take along your bus card or travel card as ID, and you can vote. If you're a student, you cannot.
Which, I mean, it's slightly veering off the subject, but Vicky, that does seem to be very unfair, doesn't it?
So the rationale for that is to get the older person's travel card, you've had to produce ID to get that travel card, whereas to get the student card, you don't need to prove, verify who you are. It's a lower level of verification. So there's verification for voters. That's why there's a different type of ID. Because you've already had to show your passport or driver's licence to prove that you've got your bus pass. That's my understanding. On the issue of the triple lock...
Come to in a second.
I did, thank you. Just one thing, actually. This week I read there was, it may have been another select committee, Robert Buckland, I think, was leading it. He was the architect of these reforms of election law. And he admitted basically the Tories had got it wrong, because they brought in this change in the law off the back of 3 cases of fraud over the last 7 years. And in the last by-election, 14,000 younger people that were not white were not able to vote. 14,000 people in one by-election, and that shows you what they've achieved in terms of gerrymandering.
That wasn't actually the question that you were supposed to be answering, though, if you don't mind me saying so. The question was, should pensioners regret voting Tory now that they're coming after them as they were always going to?
The simple answer is they haven't come after them yet, have they? But Barry's right, there's a whole lot of other reasons to regret voting.
OK, Vicky.
So, first of all, we have kept the promise. It was the Conservatives who introduced the triple lock. We introduced it in 2010. We've kept it every year since.
No, you haven't. There was 1 year that we didn't in COVID.
There was a year when there was a statistical issue with how inflation was being calculated during the COVID period due to that, and therefore it was done over a 2-year period, not the 1-year period. But we have kept it. The Prime Minister is very clear it's been kept. Now, at this time, we are keeping that promise. Furthermore, we've introduced other protections for pensioners and for those on low income as well, putting money, especially to those into lower incomes. The move to do the triple lock, another move to support those on lower income, has meant that there's 200,000 fewer pensioners in poverty than there were back in 2010. I treat my pensioners extremely seriously as a vulnerable group, especially those on low income. We've been talking about how we make sure they get supported through this winter as well, Barry and I just today. Keeping your promises is really important, and what we have seen by Labour is again and again this flip-flopping. They've done it again today, a promise they made 3 weeks ago when they said they would support the new government measures to help unlock more new homes for the millennials who are now in their 30s and 40s. They flip-flopped on that just today. What I would say, and I think the Prime Minister's right here, is we're a year away from a general election, and I'm an economist and a mathematician as well. I like to look at the numbers and make all of your policies, if you can, looking at them in the round. So being pressurised to come up with general election promises a year ahead of a general election is something I can understand saying, stand back on it. But will we put pensioners absolutely at the forefront and others?
No, if you were doing that, you would give a commitment now and say, I, Vicky Ford, as an MP, if the government
I've stood in the last two general elections.
We're not going to do this, I would fight it.
So I want to make sure that pensioners have got decent quality of life, decent support from the government. That's why we introduced the pensions triple lock in 2010, a Conservative policy, a Conservative-led policy that we've continued to support throughout.
So that indicates to me, without you actually saying it, that you would support the continuation of the triple lock, all other things being equal.
I think there's another good point in that one of the other things the Conservatives did was introduce in-work pensions, so that people who are becoming pensioners now and in the future will have had more of their own pension, not state pension.
Not what I asked you.
So I can understand wanting to think about how are we supporting different cohorts of pensions, but I want to see support for pensioners. And I believe...
So when I put it last night to your colleague Robert Buckland, who was sat in that seat that you're sitting in now, or was he in the other? I can't remember. He agreed with me that it would be electoral suicide for the Conservatives to abandon the triple lock before the next election.
I want to make sure there's proper support for pensions, and it's been Conservative policy since 2010 that we do that through the triple lock.
Can I raise a point of order? Is it possible to commit suicide when you're already a dead man walking?
Well, there's a philosophical one for us all to contemplate.
On the man who banks Just Stop Oil and stops a lot of people going to work and going to jobs and being able to get ambulances to hospital, I think you have a lot to answer for.
Carry on, bring it.
Well, that
may come up
in the next half an hour as well. So let's not go into that.